This is pretty much in theory how to counter every single character in Marvel Rivals. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. With that out of the way, let's get started. So when it comes to countering Adam Warlock, it's rather straightforward. There's only really a couple things you have to look out for. See this moving circle on Adam Warlock and his teammates? Well, this means he's soulbound. Any of the damage done to people that are not Adam Warlock will be taking damage as he shares a part of his soul. And one of the other things to look out for is Adam Warlock's ultimate. Now, when placed, Adam Warlock's ultimate can res the entire team. Here's some ways to get around that. If Adam Warlock places his ultimate, you can wait about 9 seconds to kill anyone on the other team, as his ultimate only lasts for 9 seconds. Or if you do end up getting kills while his ultimate's activated, just make sure to be ready to clump and dump the enemies on that one point. Of course, it's a lot easier said than done. And Adam Warlock's passive makes him a ghost flying around and he can resurrect himself. So another way to counter him is to chase him down. But do be careful when doing this, as sometimes you can be baited into an enemy trap. But how do we counter Black Panther with all that movement and high DPS? Characters that are typically well against Black Panther are ones that have a lot of CC or something that will deal a lot of damage with him moving around a ton. Characters like Namor with his squid or octopus turrets that can shoot him when he's moving at high velocity if you can't really track or hit him. Characters like Hawkeye, if you use the supersonic bow on him, can slow him down or pull him out of the air. But in simplest terms, it's pretty much any character that has high CC, and high CC means crowd control. Characters with stuns, roots, slows, anything like that also works. But how about our sniping friend Black Widow? Although looking rather scary with the amount of damage she can do, Black Widow is really easy to get rid of and counter. Honestly, the simplest way to counter her is by jumping on her or diving her. Characters like Spider-Man, Black Panther, and Psylocke are extremely good at doing this. Although she does have a kick, she's rather easy to take care of, especially if the enemy healers and tanks aren't really helping the backline. While the healers and tanks are prioritizing the front line, this allows Black Widow to get easily dived. And since it is solo queue, most of the time a lot of people aren't vocal in this game, so it's rather easy to do this. But what about Hulk? How do you deal with him and how do you counter him? Well, just like a lot of other tank players, the best way is to chain crowd control effects. Things like stuns and roots are probably going to be the best for him. Another way is similar to D.Va from Overwatch if you're having trouble, is that when he gets knocked out of his Hulk form and turns back into Bruce, he has a split second of invulnerability in the animation. But the second he changes a different color, you can quickly eliminating him, getting a super fast and easy kill. Hopefully they fix it. But what about a character like Captain America? Well, Captain America has a ton of movement speed and just overall a ton of mobility. So just as the case with many other tanks, is that you're gonna need to do a lot of CC to him. See, Captain America is not the best tank. There's a ton of other better tanks to choose from, but some easy ways to hard counter him is by having a Groot on your team. All you have to do is wall off the Captain America from the rest of his team, then it's all just pretty much just poking him down. Now you can also avoid his reflective shield by shooting him in the feet, something that's pretty useful to know. But what about a character like Cloak and Dagger, who seems kinda impossible to kill all the time? The best or easiest time to get rid of Cloak and Dagger is when she's in their dagger form, or the female player model. See, unlike when she's in cloak form, she doesn't have as nearly as much escape that Dagger has. Characters that fare well against her are characters like Hawkeye that can try to take her out from range with a one-shot, or characters that abuse the backline. Again, things like Spider-Man, Psylocke, and even Black Panther. But what about a character like Doctor Strange, who has pretty much no counters at all? Well, some things to keep note of is that if Doctor Strange has max dark energy, he will receive a anti-heal debuff for a while. Another thing is that Doctor Strange's shield has 800 HP. It can be very challenging to play against a very good Doctor Strange, and the best course of action is to try to get him sectioned off from the rest of his team with things like root walls or just trying to attract his attention. As he is, in my eyes, one of the strongest tanks to deal with, it can be pretty annoying. But what about a tank like Groot? Well, Groot doesn't really have a main shield like many other tanks in this game. Instead, he has walls. Now, although it might seem like this character is impossible to deal with, because he doesn't really have a shield like Doctor Strange, Magneto, he's super easy to whittle down and just get rid of. Once he pops all of his walls that he can, he's pretty much useless. So either by keeping track of the amount of walls he's placing, max 3, or literally the best way to counter him is just shooting him. Again, most of the time at the higher ranks, I'm not playing against Groots, as he's not really good. He's quite literally just there to absorb damage and nothing else. So again, you can use things like stuns and roots to try to section him off from the rest of his team. But what about a character like Hawkeye, who seems to have a ton of damage output and can be quite hard to kill? One of the best ways to counter Hawkeye is trying to get 2 dive characters. For example, try to get a Spider-Man Man and Psylocke to work together to try to dive a Hawkeye in the backline. See, although Hawkeye has a lot of survivability and a lot of escape, Hawkeye only gets one double jump, then it goes on cooldown. You catch him without the double jump and he can't escape at all. And most of the time, if the Hawkeye is good, he's positioning himself in a rather good position so he doesn't have to worry about the double jump. And that's where you get the 2 dive characters. The purpose of bringing 2 dive characters is that if he uses one of his movement abilities like his double jump and say he gets away from one of the dive characters, well then hopefully the other one will catch him. But what about a character like Hela, who seemingly has no counters and just does way too much damage? Well, Hela in a way kinda acts similarly to Hawkeye, at least when it comes to countering her. Again, you want to go for that double dive to try to get rid of her. She only has really one strong movement, which is the bird, which you can easily track and follow if you're paying attention. After she gets out of her bird form, that's when you want to dive her, as she won't really have any movement to get away from you anymore. And if you want to try to counter her ultimate, either by completely shooting it or stand by a solid wall. Make sure there's no holes that she can splash and still hit you. But what about a character like Iron Fist, who has a ton of movement and a ton of shield? Well, in a way similar to Black Panther, a character like Namor or any other character that is going to give him a heavy crowd control effects are really ideal. Now honestly, Iron Fist is not the best, especially at a higher rank. He doesn't do that much damage compared to other DPS characters, so he's not picked as much. But again, if you're struggling against him, characters like Namor or characters with high CC, characters like Groot, or any other character that can kinda out heal his damage that he's doing to is pretty ideal, like Mantis, Luna Snow. But then we have a character like Iron Man. How do we deal with him? Well, as Iron Man is constantly flying, hit scan characters are very ideal against him. You have an array of hit scan characters in this game. Characters like Punisher, Black Widow, and even Starlord are very good against him. And even though his ultimate might seem scary, it's rather easy to dodge. There's just so many characters that can get Iron Man out of the sky that it's honestly not even worth playing him. But what about Jeff? He's honestly too cute to kill, but sadly you're gonna have to put that cuteness aside when you have to deal with him. Now Jeff might seem hard to hit, but he actually has an insanely big hitbox, so he's really easy to headshot, and most of the time he's just a heal bot not really doing damage. And honestly the best way to counter him, even though it's not super detailed, is literally just shooting him in the head or just diving on top of him. He's a rather squishy character, so he's really easy to deal with. But what about a character like Loki, who seems like he never dies with all of his clones? With the endless swapping, he can be quite annoying to deal with. Here's some things to look out for. Now, one of Loki's biggest and strongest abilities is titled Regeneration Domain. It's a green rune that's floating above Loki's head. Now, for whatever reason, a lot of people don't shoot these. They're very strong for Loki and his team. The best way to counter Loki is by getting rid of these as quickly as you can. The longer they're up, the less damage people are going to be taking. Now, another thing that a lot of people forget is that you can actually destroy the clones. By destroying the clones, this puts Loki at a disadvantage of not allowing him to TP. Destroy the 3 clones, then easily jump on Loki. He can't really teleport, and by previously destroying his rune, he can't really heal either, so he's kind of just a sitting duck. But what about a character like Luna Snow, who seems to never die and always have a ton of healing out? Well, just as like the case with most other characters that are going to be diving the backline are very good counters to Luna Snow. You could also say characters like Hawkeye are also a counter by getting a headshot on her and you don't have to worry about her anymore. But unless you have a really good Hawkeye on your team, it could be quite challenging. So the best course of action is by getting 2 dive DPS or dive tanks to try to jump on her. If you jump on her and she doesn't have ulti, she's pretty easy to take care of. But what about a character like Magik, who seems to never die and has a ton of shield and movement? Well, it might be easier than you think. Again, just like Black Panther, a character like Namor is a very good counter, as the turrets are constantly dealing DPS to her while she's moving around. Now, because of her movement and insane shield, you actually have to chain CC her, or crowd control. So any character with some type of stun, root, slow, anything like that is very ideal against her. Now, her primary attack is a left click, which is a melee. So the best course of action is to take a couple steps back. Try to get outside of that melee range before she dashes and uppercuts you. But what about a character like Magneto, who seems to also never die, can absorb ultimates with his shield himself and his teammates, and do quite a bit of damage? The first thing you want to do, and it's rather self-explanatory, is burn his shield as fast as you can. The second you break his shields, ultimates that are projectiles are easier to use, because you don't have to worry about him absorbing them. After you break his shield, typically he's gonna shield himself, so like a bubble will appear around him. The second that bubble goes away, shred him down as fast as you can. Now another thing is, when he pops his ultimate, try not to shoot, as as people shooting and dealing damage to the enemies will increase his damage for his ultimate. And regardless of how much he absorbs, it's rather easy to dodge. I wouldn't say he's throwing like an MLB pitcher, but there is enough time to dodge it so you don't have to worry too much. But what about a character like Mantis? Well, Mantis is pretty annoying and probably the best healer in the entire game. What I found, the only way to really counter is by getting dive DPS and tanks again. Again, she's probably the most annoying healer to play against. But let me know your thoughts in the comments, what counters you like. Now when it comes to Moon Knight, there's a couple things you have to watch out for. The first thing being staying super close and compact with your other teammates. Moon Knight's primary fire and secondary fire bounces off targets. The more clumped up you are with your teammates, the more damage he's going to be doing to you. So try to spread yourself out a little bit. Now Moon Knight's also going to be throwing these inks on the ground. They kind of look like crosses. Make sure you destroy these as fast as you can. I see a lot of my teammates walk over these without thinking of what they actually do. But what they do is if Moon Knight hits you with it, it knocks you up. After knocking you up, it slowly pulls you to the center. Of course, all of this is within a circle AoE. Now, not only does it knock you up and suck you, but Moon Knight can also use it as an anchor point to bounce his projectiles off of it onto you. So destroy it as fast as you can. And another thing is the second you're up close and personal with Moon Knight, it's pretty easy to get rid of him as he has projectiles, so it's pretty easy to dodge everything. And his ultimate is not the best and really easy to dodge as it's pretty slow. Besides that, he has a lot of movement, so typically you want to wait until he uses a grapple, then try to jump on him. But what about our fish friend Namor, whatever you want to call him? He heavily relies on his squid or octopus turrets. I don't know what creature this is, whatever it is. All you really have to do is destroy them. Besides that, most Namor players are jumping and spamming their left and right click, so hopefully you can hit him while he's jumping. Now besides that, he has one get out of jail free card. That's a shift that puts him into an invincible bubble for a little bit. Now after that water bubble goes away, you can instantly get rid of him. Most of the time, Namor players are blasting music, holding space, and left click, so that's all you really have to worry about. His ultimate, if you're full HP, won't kill you, but it will stun you and do quite a lot of damage. But most of the time it's pretty easy to dodge as there's a giant AoE on the ground that you can see. When it comes to Penny Parker, she's rather easy to take care of. She's another tank that doesn't have a shield, so she's not really helpful to the team that much. The only thing she's really useful as placing her mines and her little spider bots. All you have to do is shoot the mines to get rid of them, and all you have to do is destroy the spider spawner like you're playing Minecraft. Get rid of those two things and she's pretty much useless. That's really the only way to counter her. Get rid of her two useful gadgets and she's just a sitting duck. What about a character like Psylocke who's impossible to kill and you can rarely counter her? I guess there's a couple ways to counter her. Characters like Magik or Bucky / Winter Soldier are great counters, using your abilities on her to knock her up, stun her, and just get your shield back as well so she can't do a lot of damage. Those characters counter into her exceptionally well. But besides that, you're gonna want to slow her or do some type of CC. If she's invisible, it's pretty much impossible to see her, so you kind of have to listen for audio cues. Sometimes you can hear feet stomping and things like that. And if you know that there's Psylocke on the other team, you should always be checking behind your back, just in case she comes behind you. It's like spy checking from TF2. I guess you could say Namor is also a counter to her, because you have turrets on the ground, she becomes uninvisible. The turrets will shoot at her and you'll know that she's behind you. Now when it's her ultimate is kind of slow in a way. You have about a second to get out of the circle before she starts dealing damage to you. And it's RNG of who's going to get hit by her ultimate first inside the circle. So take a gamble and get out of there. But what about a character like Rocket Raccoon that's pretty tricky and agile? Well, Rocket Raccoon has two movements. He can wall climb and he has two thruster uses. After two thruster uses, he's really easy to dive. But do keep in mind one enemy will get revived around him, so it's always good to check your back. Now another thing is that you can destroy his ultimate and his res totem. Although it takes a lot of DPS, you can destroy them. Rocket Raccoon also doesn't really do that much DPS, so if you get close to him, chances are he's trying to heal himself and run away. So if you have a character that has a lot of catch, well then it's easy to get rid of him. How about a character like Scarlet Witch? Her ultimate can be very good and she can do a lot of damage, but how do you counter her? One of Scarlet Witch's biggest DPS is a close range little suck, so all you have to do is play range against her. If she's not within sucking range, she's not dealing damage. And her ultimate is pretty easy to dodge as well. Similar to D.Va from Overwatch, you can sit behind, walls, pillars, anything like that and get blocked by it. It also takes a charge up time, so again, it's pretty easy to dodge. And if you're trying to play Scarlet Witch, I recommend not playing her as she's not good. There's just way too many counters and hit scans that go against her, and it always feels like you're probably going to be fighting against the world. Now what about Spider-Man? insane movement, insane DPS, and rather annoying to play against. Well, again, the statement still stands. Characters like Namor with the turrets are exceptionally well against him. Again, also any characters that have some type of hard CC, again, hard crowd control, like slowing, stunning, rooting, anything like that. Because chances are he's going to be swinging around the map, impossible to hit. That's why you have turrets like Namor that shoot for you. And the second he gets on the ground, if you have a character that slows him, he's rather easy to take care of. Now what about a character like Squirrel Girl? She seems, very easy to get rid of and deal with. And you're right, she is extremely easy to deal with in counter. She has one jump that has an 8-second cooldown, so it's pretty easy to deal with her. Her ultimate is extremely easy to dodge. It's kind of like you're playing Dance Dance Revolution, going left, right, back, and forward to dodge it. The only time you really have to worry about the ultimate is when you're in a super compact like corridor or anything like that, then you have to worry. But most of the time it's just you and your team diving on Squirrel Girl and she can't really do anything. But what about Starlord? Starlord's a rather easy character again to counter. Most often he's going to be flying around a lot or staying in a high-end area, so hit scan characters are ideal against him. He only has 2 dodges and a little bit of flight, so he's rather easy to counter. His ultimate can be tricky to play against, but all you really have to do is shoot him out of the air. It's easier said than done, but believe it or not, it's really easy to shoot him out of the air. I find myself having a better time shooting him out of the air as Hawkeye than anything else. Now what about Storm? Storm falls in the same place as Iron Man. She's super easy to get rid of. By having some type of hit scan, you don't really have to worry about her. As she's constantly flying in the air, all you have to do is shoot her out of the air. And she's not that good. All you have to do is step outside of her little AoE, then you'll be taking less damage. Again, all of this is easier said than done, of course. Now what about a character like Punisher? Punisher can be pretty annoying to deal with, outputting a ton of DPS, has a ton of escape and movement, and even has a turret. If he's in a turret form, position yourself by a corner of a wall and jiggle peek and destroy his turret. You take reduced damage and you get him out of his turret for free essentially. Now honestly, if you're playing against a very good Punisher, it can be very challenging to try and dive him because he has the smoke screen that launches him backwards, so he has some escape and he has the zipline. So chances are you want to get your tanks to dive on him rather than a DPS. As he does a ton of damage with his shotgun, if a DPS tries to jump on him, you're probably going to end up getting 1 to 2 shots. So try to get like a Venom or something like that to dive on him. Now Thor is more like a DPS rather than a tank. Thor can be countered quite heavily by a lot of different things. One way is by sectioning him off from himself to his team, and just by outputting a ton of DPS. And because a lot of his DPS is from thrown projectiles, having a character with a shield, Doctor Strange, Magneto, are very good to have on your team. So in a way to counter the tank Thor is by having another tank. Pretty self-explanatory. Now speaking of tanks, how do you counter Venom? Venom can be rather annoying to deal with, especially with his one ability that grants him a ton of shield from damage lost or HP lost, and it might be easier than you think. The best way to counter Venom is by chain CCing him or chain crowd controlling him, as is the case with many other tanks, but more specifically with Venom. See, Venom essentially has 2 HP bars. By losing HP and the press of the button, he regains all of the lost HP as a shield. So by locking him down to a singular spot, you can quickly burn through his shield and his HP rather quickly. And that's honestly the best way to counter Venom, is just doing that. Now Winter Soldier, how the hell do you counter this character? This character is pretty insane, doing a ton of damage with his magnum, having a ton of shield from using his abilities, and even having an execution reset ultimate ability. This character seems pretty impossible to counter. Now what I found useful is literally by mimicking him, getting another Winter Soldier on your team. And it's basically the battle of who's a better Winter Soldier. No, but seriously, you pull the Winter Soldier with the hook into your team and your team will shred him down. But of course, they're trying to do the same thing to you. Some other really great ways of countering him is slowing him with some type of CC or crowd control effect, as well as getting a Hawkeye trying to headshot him. And just being mindful of your HP when Winter Soldier or Bucky has his ultimate up. Because if you're below a 20% threshold, you can end up getting one-shotted by him, which is pretty insane. Now last but not least, we have Wolverine. How do you counter Wolverine? It might be actually easier than you think. First and foremost, Wolverine has to be up close and personal to you. To be able to use his primary attack, he has to be within melee range or so. So first and foremost, being mindful of where you stand between yourself and him. Now another thing to look out for is if Wolverine yells, he gets reduced damage taken for about 6 seconds. After that 6-second timer is up, you can easily dump a whole bunch of damage into him. But most of the time, a lot of people aren't playing Wolverine because he's not that good, so you don't have to worry about it too much. Just keep yourself out of range and only deal damage after his shout is done. But anyways, that was my tips on how to counter every single character in Marvel Rivals. Let me know your best ways to counter the characters down below in the comments. I hope you have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next one.